Hi everybody, TJ Mack here, and in today's video, before I get started, I want to thank John Mangini for shouting out my channel a few weeks ago, and I want to pay that forward by shouting out the channel Scott Maz. Scott is somebody who's very active in the community, making comments on a lot of different channels. He also puts out content himself from time to time. He has a display case in his room with a lot of awesome vintage cards in it that he changes out. He also has a lot of 71 Topps action shot cards, very high-end examples, which to me, those cards pop when they're in really nice shape. I like the set in general anyways, in any condition, but when you have the ones that have the really nice photography and they're just sharp-looking cards, they're works of art, just beautiful cards. So if you enjoy vintage cards, he also has some unopened packs, and somebody who just puts out content from time to time, I think you'd be better off for subscribing to him. So just give him a look if you would. Now, what I want to talk about today, first of all, is I've added to my channel name. I've been thinking about doing this for a while, and I was known as TJ Mack Vintage Cards. Now I want to call myself TJ Mack Vintage Cards and Nostalgia. And the reason is, it probably is not going to make a difference to anybody else, but for me, it does, because when I first put my channel together in November of 2020, I was just wanting to show off some cards and talk about them, and wasn't sure how long this was going to last, but I still find myself here almost 2 years later. And what I found over that time is my videos have gained, their own personality to them that I express through how I show my cards. And nostalgia is a big driver to that. It's a big driver to how I've collected since I got back into the hobby in 2000. So I thought it would be good to add that to my channel name, because that is part of who I am as a collector. And with that, I wanted to talk a little bit today, because I've had some new subscribers, and I wanted to talk about my main collecting focus. Now, I collect cards from the 1930s to 1989. That's 99.999% of my collection. I have 2 cards, I think, after the year 1989. But everything before that is predominantly from the 30s to 1989. The brunt of my collection, though, is from 1956 to 1989, and that's by design. I wanted to get most of the big Hall of Famers and stars from that era in baseball and football, and many of them even in hockey, but I still have quite a ways to go there. But in baseball and football, I predominantly, pretty much every Hall of Fame and star card from 56 to 89 Topps in those 2 sports. And then there's also in football, there's Flair in Philadelphia as well, which I have those too. And I religiously worked at that for about 20 years, and I've completed most of that. There's just a couple that I need left, and they're ones I may or may not get. And the reason why I did that is because those are the years that I connect with. That's the golden age of pop culture. From 56 to 89, you saw the birth of rock and roll and its evolution as a music genre. You had the growth of the sitcoms and the dramas and the westerns on TV, because millions of people started getting televisions into their home. And I'm a Gen Xer, so I grew up in the era when both parents worked. So when I get home from school, I would have a few hours, if I wasn't playing with my friends, which was much of the time. Then I would be watching television, and I would see a lot of those sitcoms from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then I grew up in the late 70s and 80s and would see the shows that came out then, and the sports from that time. And we all had those shared experiences because we consumed information in much the same way. You don't see that anymore, even though we have more ways to get information. What happens then is we watch a lot of the different information, that comes to us, different shows, things like that, so we don't have as much common experience, and there's more entertainment competing for our time, which also, I think, lessens the impact of some events in our culture. So I'm very fortunate to have grown up in a time where I got to appreciate that golden era of pop culture and got to live that. And I think those of us who were born during that time frame will always have that shared experience. And that even comes down to how we collected cards. We'd open the packs and build sets the old-fashioned way, rubber band the players by teams and things like that. So a great time to grow up. But what I want to talk about here is, you look at these 4 cards here. You got Mickey Mantle, Hank Aaron, Charlie Connerly, Johnny Unitas. And again, I have many cards from the 58 set, what I just use these for as an example, because when I look at these cards, I can go back to the culture of 1958. You had shows like The Rifleman and Leave It to Beaver on TV. Music like Volare was out that year as the #1 song, Tequila, and just different music from that time that was on the airwaves. And when you look at these cards from 1958, they also take you back to the moments of sports. You got Mickey Mantle versus Hank Aaron in the World Series. It was a rematch. The Braves won the World Series in 7 in 1957. The Yankees got their revenge and won the World Series in 7 games in 1958. And you had these two great players matched up against one another. There was less teams, so you'd see more of the superstars pairing off against each other in the World Series during that time. Just a golden age of baseball during that era. And when I see these two cards, it makes me think about that. I don't say, oh, yeah, I look at this, and yeah, they're beautiful cards. They're great to show off in my card room, but I really have that connection to them. And then next to him, you got Charlie Connerly and Johnny Unitas, who faced off in December 28th, 1958. Just a pivotal year in NFL history in the championship game that year. 45 million people watched that game. The Colts beat the Giants 23-17. There were 17 Hall of Famers that played in that game or coached, and 2 of the coaches were Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry, who both coached on the Giants. Landry did the defense and Lombardi did the offense. So you just had all these great moments going on that time. So when I put these cards together and I display them, there's just so many different feelings that come in, and it's just that connection back to the history of that time and the culture at that time. And oh, to be a kid in New York City in 1969, we had Joe Namath putting the AFL on the map by beating the Goliath Colts, who were a 19.5-point favorite. And then New Yorkers were treated to one of the great underdog seasons in baseball history when an amazing group of players from a perennial loser were led by Tom Terrific's 25 wins as they knocked off the 109-win Baltimore Orioles in the World Series. So when you see these two cards together, that's the connection. And I chose the 68 Topps Namath instead of 69 because when they won that Super Bowl, that would have been the set the kids would have had in their collections at that time. 69 wouldn't have come out till the fall of the next season. So these are just two cards that, man, take you back to that time. 69 was a pivotal year in American history as well, with the landing on the moon and in the United States triumphing in the space race of the 1960s. So just a great era, and when you have cards like this, it can take you back to those moments. And you have the 77 Yankees team, the topsy-turvy Yankees of that year, who had all the infighting going on between Billy Martin and Thurman Munson and Reggie Jackson, and they just competed on the headlines that summer with the son of Sam, who was committing murders in New York City during that time. You had the mayor's race going on, and these things were chronicled in the ESPN series, The Bronx is Burning, as well as books that have been written on it. There's probably even some documentaries out there, too. And it's just a really interesting season to me, 1977. And then the Yankees come through and they triumph in the end, beating the Baltimore Orioles here, as represented by Jim Palmer, by 2.5 games. And you got this great Carlton Fisk here showing, the Yankees and the Red Sox here competing against one another on this card. And just, nice memories here. You can look at these cards and you can capture that history. And it's just something that's very important to me in my collecting. There are some years that I do a little added focus on in my collecting, either looking for some really nice examples of the cards because they just have a extra special meaning to me, or I just buy additional cards beyond a set amount that I'm looking for display. And one of them is 1975 in football. And the reason that is for me, I just love the design, number one, but also because it brings back good memories. My brother and I bought a bunch of mid-70s football back in the late 80s, and I used to sit in front of the television and I would just sort these cards, and the 75s were always my favorite. And that set didn't have that grouping of cards we bought didn't have a lot of the big stars in it, but I still enjoyed it, putting them in team order and things like that. And then I would try to pick up a card here and there at a local card show or when the shop started opening up in town. So I made a commitment that I said, I really like this 75 set, and this is one that I really want to add more and more to, just because it has those special memories for me. And I just love the photography in the set as well. Not the best example is probably in the Ham and the Blitnikoff, but that Tarkenton is just a beautiful card. And there's a lot of photos like that within the set. And it's just one that brings back nice memories for me. And one of the projects I'm working on is getting additional cards from the 87 Donruss set. And these are just a few of the examples that I have from my collection. But the Mattingly, McGuire, and Reggie, just three of my favorites from that decade. I remember ripping those packs open in 87, wanting that 87 Donruss McGuire. My dad would give me some money to go to the store and get some of those packs. I was a big Don Mattingly fan, and just that's quintessential Mattingly there in that batting pose, or batting stance at the plate. And then you got Reggie Jackson there on the backswing, just another great card of him. He was finishing up his career, so then I became a McGuire fan and even more of a Mattingly fan, I suppose, after Reggie retired. I think the biggest change to my collection over the time since I've started my channel is just the growth in my enjoyment of the magazines. And it really rekindled something that I liked as a kid. I used to love to read books from the library that were written during the time when certain players played. Like they'd have a lot of books just profiling different players in the 60s and 70s, and they were written around that time. So it was nice to see the perspective and who they thought were the good players then. And that's something that I just really love about collecting, is that, and that's what the magazines do, and that's what some of those books do. And those are the players that I'm getting more and more into, the guys like Rocky Colavito and Ken Boyer and players like that were just so highly regarded in the day that they played versus maybe how they're looked at today. And here's one magazine in particular that I like. It's the edition that from Sport Magazine in 1974 that chronicled Hank Aaron's 715th home run. And this is just a special magazine to me because, again, back then in the pop era of this golden age of pop culture, we had the shared experience of events. I didn't see Hank Aaron hit his home run, but my dad told me where he was when he did it, and I've seen it many times shown on television after the fact. And it's something that all of us can share growing up during that time. And then I have the 74 Topps Hank Aaron, so I bring my love of card collecting with the nostalgia and the magazines from that time frame. So they're all rolled up to one, which really signifies my collecting experience. So here you have a beautiful 1972 Sport magazine with Johnny Bench on the cover. This is just a fine example of this magazine, and it just shows Johnny Bench there with his mask off, just running forward there with the batter standing next to him. And this was the time when Bench was on the cusp of helping those Reds teams into mid-70s dominance when they became known as the Big Red Machine. And again, this time frame, you can read the articles, you get a contemporary view of the players at that time, which is what I enjoy. I have the 72 Topps from that year. Just a beautiful card here. Love that set with the Reds there. Looks like the marquee of a movie theater or something like that. There you'd see the name in lights, and there you got Reds just shining right above his head there. Just a wonderful card, and one of my favorite sets of the 70s. I like every set, but in its own way, the 72 set stands out. Similar to the 75 in some with the colors and that, but one that really sticks out amongst the groups of sets from that era. So that's what I wanted to share today. I just wanted to really talk about a little bit more about my motivations in collecting. You're always getting new subscribers to your channel, so it's good to share that, because usually people aren't going back and watching your older videos because there's so much new content coming out. But I do enjoy very much sharing with the community, and everybody have a great weekend.